college planning process. And today, if you're going to join live, if you would say hello in the chat, that would help us out to know that you're there. And major by understanding your strengths. So, Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Finally feeling better. I was feeling for a couple of weeks, and so glad to finally be, feeling healthy, not out of breath all the time. So yeah, things are looking up on my end, at least here at home. I haven't been outside of the front door of my apartment in 14, 15, 16 days, something like that. So yeah, so yeah, glad to get to have some outside contact.
Yeah, so for those of us that are watching this much later, we're talking about the coronavirus, and Bobby and his roommate, partner, girlfriend, both had it, so he's recovering. So
yeah. So we had a fairly mild case, and it's we're just glad to be through it and help other people understand that you just need to rest at home and keep attention to how you are breathing and don't go outside, and as long as you can keep breathing, you can recover at home. And if you do have any trouble breathing, then you go to the hospital. So that's it. It's a scary time, but we just all need to be together and on this and do what we can.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to jump right in because we have a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do first is I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what CliftonStrengths is. And that's what part of the topic today is using your strengths to pick out a major as well as a career. I've got a question for you first, and you're going to have to remember back far. But do you remember getting your report card and giving it to your parents? You remember those days?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know if you ever got C's on your report card.
No, I did pretty well on my report card, but I think we've all had the experience of getting a grade or something on your report card that you didn't want to show to your parents. Whether it was, I think back when I was in elementary school, citizenship scores, or you just got a grade that wasn't as high as you expected. So the surprising things that you're embarrassed about on your report cards, certainly.
Well, here's the question I have for you. Do you remember your parents' reaction?
Usually, my parents would usually be very encouraging about that you could do better, although sometimes my parents were a little bit kind of harsher on me, so they might have been a little like what did you do wrong sometimes.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you what typically happens is they say, oh, look, you got an A in math and an A in this and a B in that, and now let's talk about the C. And they spend most of the time talking about where you didn't do well. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don Clifton, the guy that came up with CliftonStrengths, actually wanted to flip that. And his question and the theory behind strengths is if we focus on our weaknesses, we can get better. We can get better at our weaknesses. But if we focus on our strengths, we can get exponentially better. And
I love that idea.
Isn't it awesome? And thinking about, why focus on what we are bad at, and let's focus on what people are really good at. And that's what CliftonStrengths is all about. It's about figuring out where your true talents lie, and focusing all of your attention on that, because when we do that, it actually energizes us and makes us happy.
That's really interesting because, over the years, I've always been really interested in all the different kinds of tests that are similar to this, partially because my grandmother was an educational diagnostician. And so when I was a child and I would visit my grandparents, my grandmother would give me tests like this for practice to learn how to give them to other students. And she often wouldn't tell me what the results were. I would say, well, okay, how did I do it? And she'd say, oh, you did very, very well, or something like that. But so I just liked taking tests like this. And then, so, over the years I've taken, the young typology test, like the ENFP, type things, which is the Myers-Briggs, or all those different things. And a lot of those focus on personality types, and things like that. And when I took this a few days ago, which I guess I'm revealing, what we're doing here, but yeah. So I went through and took the CliftonStrengths test, which you had me do, which is what you have your students, right? And the students that you coach. And And I did notice, one of the things I noticed is that there were a lot of questions about whether you focus on maximizing your strengths or on improving your weaknesses. And I found those questions really interesting because I'd never been asked those before. So this test seemed to be a lot more about how do you work with people in teams? How do you work with people in groups? Do you prefer to work alone? Do you prefer to work together? And personally, do you work on your strengths or do you work on your weaknesses or things like that? Or do you think about how to improve things? Or do you make lists about how to improve things? Or do you actually just do things, right? Or do you do more thinking or do you more doing? And I found that really interesting because some people are very heavily on one side or the other, but I am definitely I guess I maybe spent a lot of my younger years focusing a lot on my weaknesses, and then definitely in the past 10 years, I mean, that's when I became a tutor was, my strength is teaching and, that sort of thing. And that's why I decided to become a tutor. But that's what I want to hear, what you saw in this report and stuff. This is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going at it a little bit differently today. When I take my students through this, they obviously typically don't have jobs.
Right. Yeah.
Help them figure out a career path,
right,
based on several things, not just the Clifton strengths, but based on what they were good at in school, what their interests are, and then also about their natural talents and how do those fit together. So as I'm using Bobby as my guinea pig today to teach you what I do with my students, we're going to refer back to what you do today, and if your talents truly fit with your coaching. All right.
Absolutely.
One of the things that Albert Einstein said one time, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and he said, everybody's a genius.
Yeah.
But if you judge a fish by how he climbs a tree, he'll live its whole life thinking he's stupid.
100%.
Absolutely. Right. And, for those people that are in jobs that they just are like, you know what, this is hard. I'm not having fun. I don't want to get out of bed in the morning and go. I can guarantee you it's because you're not living within your strengths. You're not doing the things that you naturally are talented at. So I get a lot of people going, Kristin, really, come on. My 15-year-old, my 16, my 18-year-old can figure out what they want to do as far as a career right now. And my answer is no, but what they can figure out is definitely a career path and, what they are naturally talented at. So we'll dive into this. Let me make sure I haven't forgotten anything. I've got sticky notes all over my computer, so I don't forget anything.
And just one note before we start that, I mean, tutoring is my fourth career, if depending on how you count it. And I mean, I wasted a solid 10 or 15 years of my life because I didn't think about this, right? And I was an accountant for 2 years. I was an attorney for 10 years. I tried opening a restaurant and owning a restaurant for a few years, and now I have been a tutor for 10 years and I do love that. But I mean, who the heck knows? I may end up doing another thing. So, and even right now, like I am also have a side gig as a voice actor. Like I have a demo reel and I do voice acting, and I also am right now working on a book about tutoring and test prep. So, writing is another thing. So there are many things. So I'm not done with the careers. So this is advice that can practically help right now, so.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, you're bringing up a good point. It's just because you pick a career today, right? Life is a journey, and we are going to navigate through this. And, it used to be that our parents would stay in a job for 30 plus years and retire at the same job. For us, we're looking at people changing jobs or careers every 5 to 6 years. For kids today, it's every 2 years they're changing a job. So they are going to have to figure out how to navigate this and how to do it well, right?
100%. Yeah.
And the hope is that by going through this training, they can figure out how to jump to the next best thing, meaning best for them, not just, somebody else had a good idea and they're jumping on it. It's that they're built to do this. So the more knowledge that they have to do that, the better off they're going to be and the more they're going to enjoy their work life. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive in.
All right. So Bobby took the CliftonStrengths test. and we call it an assessment. I still call it a test sometimes, and I'm
Sure.
yes, because this, by the way, you can't flunk this as long
Right.
as long as you take it and you answer the questions. There are 171 questions, and they give you 21 seconds to answer each individual question. So they keep you moving fast, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you saw that, Bobby.
Oh, yeah.
And here's a question I've got for you. So I've got all of your reports in front of me, and I'll tell you, I typically don't read the reports because what's really cool about the Clifton Strengths is they take all of your 34 themes, they rank 1 to 34, and because the themes kind of weave in and out of each other, they play off each other.
Oh, yeah.
Your report, if you had a person sitting next to you with the same top 5, same order, that report's going to be 95% different.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that specialized, and that customized to you based on your strengths. So when you read it, did it sound like you? I mean, were you looking at it going, yeah?
Oh, I think very strongly, yeah, it did. And and I think there's always some little parts of kind of test like this, little parts of it always feel the way the Myers-Briggs or even like one of those horoscope thing does, which is little parts of it, because I've taken so many of them, feel a little bit like that, where it's like, perhaps you might sometimes trust someone more than you should at first. Well, I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody does that. But then other things, other than, a few statements like that, almost all of it was really hardcore, very strongly describing me. Like, my work behaviors, for instance, that I very strongly much prefer to work alone, that rather than being part of a team, that I would rather take something myself and work on making it better. And that I often, like, if I can't make something perfect, I'll kind of just not finish it, and I'll go off and maybe I'll have various uncompleted tasks or something like that I like to work, rather work at the end of a deadline rather than, like do things in advance, all those sorts of things. It definitely nailed a lot of things that have been a big deal throughout my career of why I did not enjoy working in like the very regimented attorney environment. I love working individually as a tutor and things like that. So I thought it was really shockingly spot on, and especially with personal relationships, the way I handle, personal relationships, it really nailed some things about that. So I was really impressed.
Cool. And I will tell you, very few people that I talk to don't have that same reaction.
No,
in fact,
neat.
I had one that was like, it's not like me at all. And then because then we talked through a lot of, and then the light bulbs went off and they're like, well, okay, maybe it is a little bit like me. Yeah. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about 3 of your strengths. And the first one I wanted to talk about was your first strength, which is input. And typically what I do is I give you a little bit about what input's about, and then I just want to hear your reactions and have you kind of tell me based on the report, the things that you thought were right and the things that you didn't want to agree with. The first thing about input is you like to collect stuff. Now, stuff can be a lot of different things. It can be items, tangible items. It can be information. It can be articles. What do you collect? And besides, tests. I know you collect tests.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of questions about this in the report, but it was about, would you either read, articles about 40 different subjects, or would you rather, go out and experience things in the world or something like that, and like, or things like that. Like, not that question was not one of them, but there was a lot of stuff like that. And I mean, it is really interesting that was the #1 ranked thing, because anyone who's been my friend for a really long time, that primary thing that people would comment about me is that I am an information sponge, or whatever you say about that have been, like, literally when I was 8 years old, I guess, as a child back then, many families would own at their house, I guess parents just thought it was important to own the set of the World Book Encyclopedia, right?
Yeah.
That was a thing back in the 70s and the 60s, right? And so we owned the World Book Encyclopedia. And as an 8-year-old child, at the end of the set, there were 2 volumes in the children's volumes of the World Book Encyclopedia. And so I would sit on the floor and I would read I would start at the first page and I read the inner children's book encyclopedia, not because anyone told me to. I just thought they were interesting. And so I finished reading those. I read them 10 or 20 more times, right? And because, once Sesame Street and, like Electric Company were over on TV, there was nothing else to watch on TV. So I did do that. But then I got bored of books. So I started with the A volume of the regular encyclopedia and just started reading it. And eventually my mom started getting really frustrated and instructed me that I had to go outside and play outside. And so I would take a book and stick it in the back of my short and go outside, and then I'd find a tree and sit in the tree and read that book. Like I was literally that of a nerd as a kid, and as an adult, like literally, I'm that much a nerd that if I'm out, I am a very social person who wants to go out. I am often, out with friends, socially going to happy hours. I do have very active social life, and I'm constantly very often out with people, but I will also, people will say, well, oh, why are you looking at your phone? But with some people, they're looking at the phone because they're just going through their Facebook wall or something. But I'm looking at my phone because I'm reading some interesting article that I saw, so I'm like, well, the people around me are talking about something. If I'm I'm like reading an article on the Atlantic or something that I find interesting, because I'm often doing 3 things at a time. And one of those things is I am absorbing new information. I'm constantly learning, and I have this obsession with it. And it was in that report, it said things like, if I know more interesting things, then the next time I'm at happy hour with a group of 3 or 4 people, I'm going to say something really interesting. And I know I'm talking forever about this, but this is just so fascinating to me. The last time I visited Austin, where I used to live, I went to happy hour with some of my friends, and that I hadn't seen in like a year and a half. And this friend sat down with me, and I hadn't seen him in a year and a half. And after 20 minutes with me, my friend looked at me and he said, "Oh my God," he's like, "every time I hang out with you at happy hour, when I leave, my phone web browser has 7 or 8 new tabs open on it of things that I have opened up that I have to go look up because they're all so interesting. And I have to go," he's like, "I have all these things I have to go look up that you've told me about. They're so interesting." Because that is kind of the goal of it, is to know things and to pass them on to other people. I'm literally trying to learn things so I can educate people. Anyway, that's
And look at your face. It's so funny when I talk to people about strengths. I call it finding the shine in their eyes, and they light up. They just light up. And and when I'm working with my students, you think about it, they're 17. I work from anywhere from 17 to 23 years old, right? How often do we get to sit down and talk about the stuff you're good at and the stuff that you've got this huge interest in, right? They grow 2 inches. And I get that same thing. I get to see the shine in their eyes. And that's truly the beauty of this figuring out a career path, because I'm trained to see it, right? I get to dig that out of them, and you're doing it exactly, like I see it in all these kids, which is kind of fun for me. And
that's exactly right.
When I was looking at your strengths, one of the things that came to me on this input strength is that you have an active curiosity. And when I came to you and said, "Hey, let's do this show, what do you think?" And you're like, "Yeah, let's do it." Number one, I was excited about that, and we'll talk about that when we talk about some of your other strengths. But the other part is, I'm hugely thankful because when we have guests on, that comes out when you have these awesome questions that you're asking all these guests that I was like, dang, I never would have thought of that. So, but it's that input. It's that you just are so interested in all this great information that you just pull and pull, and that's definitely your input coming out.
Yeah, that's really neat. And it is like in tutoring, like, often I'm tutoring students and I do have a big passion for it. But once in a while, the thing that just happened to me, and it's funny because, the thing that just happened with me a minute ago, like I do that sometimes during a tutoring session and I just suddenly find myself saying, okay, I just have to say, like, this really makes me mad about this test because they're doing this and this and this and this. And I'll talk for a few seconds and I get really excited and I'm like, okay, so what I just did for like 5 minutes, that wasn't tutoring. That was just an opinion I wanted to express. And you seem like a student that would be interested in that. And I just wanted to say that to you. And I'm not going to charge you for like that. I'm going to shorten our session by like 10 minutes. I'm not going to bill you for that because I thought you'd be interested in that. And I just get excited sometimes. And I wanted to say that because it's just interesting, and I think students really that they get excited and, they like to see that excitement. And man, if you can find a job where you get that excited about stuff, yeah, my gosh, yes. Because I can tell you in 10 years of being an attorney, I never got excited in this way ever about anything ever.
Well, let's talk about that though. So your input is, think about all of these tests that you've taken and aced, basically.
Right.
I mean, a lot of that was you going out, gathering information, finding out more things so that you could pass these tests. Now, does that help you with your job? Absolutely, because when students are tackling questions, you talk about that.
Oh, of course. That's why tutoring is such a good job for me, because being this kind of collector of information, whether it's about tests or whatever, like if you're that kind of person, then you have a big vocabulary. And so because of a big vocabulary, that makes me good at tutoring the SAT, and that sort of thing. And also, as a side point, like this is what's dangerous about this thing is the reason I'm an attorney and was an attorney for 10 years, partially is because my father is an attorney, but partially because I aced the LSAT. I'm good at tests, LSAT, because it was an interesting test. I loved the test. It's a great test. So I got a great score on it. So then I got a full scholarship to law schools. I was like, oh, I guess I'll go to law school. Then I had to be an attorney. And I loved law schools. Law school, the first year of law school was amazing. It's really challenging and interesting. But being a lawyer, it was terrible. And same thing for accounting. Accounting in college was fascinating classes because it's really hard. And the test and the CPA exam is hard. It was really hard to take. That was neat. I like hard tests. I hated being an accountant. So just because you can do the tests and take the classes doesn't mean you want to do that job. And that's what students need to know, right? But it is why, since I love the test but not the job, my job should be teaching students about the test, not doing the job, if that makes sense. And it took me so long to figure it out.
Well, let's talk about a couple of your other strengths, because I think it'll be clear for people that are watching this as to the activities you love and why coaching makes sense. So
it has to be weird for input to be a number one ranked thing for a person.
We put number one and learner number two, and I see those two together a lot. So, and I wasn't going to talk about learner because just because there are a couple other ones that I wanted to do that have a little bit different theme behind them. But let's talk about that really shortly. Input is that you want to collect information. That's important to you. Like you probably have a ton of tabs up at the top of your computer all the time, right? Because and what I've found interesting about people high in input is I'll say something like, man, I just was reading an article yesterday on sunflowers, and they'll go, oh, look it. I can tell you all about sunflowers. And you're like, where did you pull that out of your hat? But you do it all the time. And because you have all this information either in your head, in a place that you know where to get it, it's amazing. Learner is you just love the activity of learning.
You love going to classes, going to lectures, listening to TED Talks.
Yep. And you were mixing those in, but that's okay because that's what strengths are. They do weave in and out of each other. But understand that it's the joy that you get from what activity is the important part. And the joy you get from input is collecting the information. The joy you get from learning is you just love learning. That process of learning. Okay. Maximizer is the next one I did want to talk about.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool. People that are high in maximizer love taking things that they see as good and making them awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They will look at things that they think have no merit, and basically they're like, I'm not touching that because it has no interest for you,
Yeah,
right? So it's kind of a
100%.
sorting thing. Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was really cool about Maximizer and you for what you do is a lot of times people behind Maximizer are really good at seeing other people's talents before they even see them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this really was fascinating to me because I have never heard of this idea ever in my life. The idea of this concept of being a maximizer or whatever it is the of this being a thing, right? Like, I mean, I relate to it so much. So they pegged a thing that I didn't know exists. But yeah, like it describes something perfectly, which is like if I look at something and say, I mean, I will look at something, a process or a test or whatever, uh, 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 somebody invites me to a party or a get together or anything or just whatever it is, any random thing. And I'll just say, I hate that. I have no interest in that. You know, do you want to on this thing? Do you want to help me fix this thing? Do you want to any of that? And I will say, I have absolutely I can't do anything with that. No, I have no interest. But then if he says, oh, I've got this thing I'm working on, and I'm like, oh, okay, no, wait, I see something there. Yeah, but okay, if we do this, oh man, that thing could be really cool. And so, but it got me into a lot of trouble when I worked at accounting firms and law firms because what I did all the time as a first year and second year accountant and attorney is I would look at every process in the entire building, in the entire thing, and I would say, and I'd come in and I'd say, this attendance, this day off policy, this the way we get our coffee in the coffee room, whatever it is, this process is just like if you just change these three things, this would be an awesome process. So just if you and I would write little memos to the officer and say, if you just fix this, and this, then everything would work great, and it would be so easy to make this process awesome. And they would say, we have no interest in that or whatever. And so I would go around fixing things that in other people's opinion didn't need to be fixed because it was so easy to maximize and fix their processes. And then you think about what this looks like to the partners at the top end of the law firm. They're like, why is this first year attorney running around and fixing how the mailroom works and helping the mailroom guy do his job better and advising our accountant on how her spreadsheet could be fixed better and stuff like that. And they're like, this guy is not focused on his attorney work. He's like trying to get our website to look better. And,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, well, no, but why are things inefficient around here? Fix all this. It's very easy to fix. And but I mean, and so like in my own daily life, I said working on my own, I have all these little spreadsheets that manage everything I do. And I am constantly every day, like I'll be working on something and I'll be inputting, and then I'm like, ooh, okay, if I change these three things, this spreadsheet will work a little better. And so then I'll spend an hour and a half like putting lines here and formatting things a little different. And I'm like, ooh, this calculation would be a slightly bit better. And so I'm perfecting things and making them
Yeah,
better. So yeah,
you're
I'm
bringing,
constantly doing that everywhere.
you're bringing up something too. So all of our strengths can also be weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
And for Maximizer, sometimes you're looking for perfect. And
Exactly.
sometimes on Maximizer, we have to remind ourselves that 80% gets the job done
Absolutely.
in certain
Right.
situations, right?
Okay, yeah. Now let me say another thing. So that does, and so now I am in a position right now where some of that stuff I'm doing is perfectly fine to do because I have hours free in my day, particularly right now. But I want to talk about real quickly the one other thing, which is the other people, right? So given that right now, like I work completely on my own, like I in conversation with people, like I did this a few months ago. I am rebranding a certain part of my business. I'm launching a new thing, writing a book. I'd come up with a name, a logo, things. I'm going to be launching that in a few weeks. And so I'm out with friends and I'm talking with friends and kind of on the alert for this. But so a friend he works at a magazine. He is their director of art design, and he's talking, and I say, you know about designing things, can probably design logos, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can. I'm like, okay, so, and then my other friend, I'm like, you work in advertising, you probably know things about brand and names and you know, and so I'm like, finding these people and then saying, okay, so you could this and that. And I think even in your relationship and mine, Kristin, like that does relate to how this thing got started, because you said, hey, we could do this thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I can see how you would have this talent and I would have this talent. And we both are maximizing each, like this is something I really wanted to do, but I didn't have my skill is not the organizational skill to get something like this started. Yours is. So we each saw in each other, but you saw in me the thing. And so I think that is a maximizer thing, because I had the enthusiasm to say yes and have some ways to figure it, you know, so we together did that. I think that is definitely part of the maximizer.
Well,
right?
Yes, it is absolutely, because it is looking for other people's strengths as well. I think maximize, as well as a couple other strengths, are true epitome of what the strengths are. And that is where you are looking for the good stuff. You know, you're looking for the strengths in other people. And you brought up,
and I think
go ahead. Another part of CliftonStrengths that I think you're going to find interesting for sure. And that is, there are 4 domains. So all the 34 strengths fall within one of 4 domains. And your report on page 21 shows you where you play well, okay, where you're the strongest. And you're really high in strategic thinking, then influencing, relationship building gets pretty small, and then executing is like, you should not be there at all. So by the way, if you need to hire a virtual assistant, that might be a good
oh man, I tell you, I need one. Yeah.
Well, because here's the deal. When you're executing, it actually is going to drain you. This is not going to be fun for you at all.
Totally. Oh, yeah. So true.
So let me tell you why I bring this up. My strategic thinking is at the bottom of my list. So I've actually, in my business, partnered with a lot of strategic thinking people, because when I have to do that, I'm unhappy. It's not fun for me. In fact, it's why I really hated my last 2 jobs, because when I got to the VP position within my work, I decided I needed to be this great strategic thinker, and I hated everything I did. And when I figured that out, Bobby, the lights went off, the light bulbs went off, and I was like, oh my gosh, that didn't bring me to the party. You know what brought me to the party? I'm really good at influencing people. I'm really good with relationships. That's why they wanted me in the VP position, not for my great strategic thinking skills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it was amazing how, my husband had to like force me to get out of bed in the morning. He's like, get up. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I love to work. I love working, and I do every minute of this. And it was that I was not playing in my zone.
That's what's so fascinating about this, is that if you don't understand these things, you don't know what's wrong and what's happening. And I was so miserable for so many years as an attorney, and I didn't know why. And I felt like I was a bad person, and it made me, I would go into late to work because I hated it so much. And I didn't know why I hated it so much. And I felt like I was a terrible person for hating it. And God, if I had known these things before, I would have gotten the heck out of it. You know, it's so fascinating. So yeah, this is really, really, really amazing.
I know we're going over, but I'm going to continue to go.
Yeah, let's keep going.
So, and ask questions if you hear something that you think these might be one of your strengths. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Futuristic is actually one of your top strengths as well, and it is a strategic strength. And the beauty of people with futuristic is you're really good at seeing into the future and having these vivid pictures of what the future looks like. And for you, I always ask for futuristic people, how far into the future do you see?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like, because I wouldn't have thought of myself as that much of a futuristic thinker. And then when it said this, there were so many questions about it. You know, I guess it is, especially right now. Like, I mean, I found myself in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. Like, I'm, you know, trying to collect information, put it out on Facebook, and I'm like, found myself trying to stay sane, like making all these spreadsheets trying to predict what's going on. So I'm definitely trying to think about the future, and I'm helping my students like figure out what's happening, like when will the tests start back up again? When will the next SAT be? Will the June tests happen? Seems like they may not. Maybe they're going to be delayed. So we're having to talk about, the future. And so I think like that is something that I wasn't 10 years ago. And now I am. And I just really feel like, I mean, maybe that's just something that happens as you age, but you start thinking about the future a lot. But I don't know. I think that's just part of, what I do now. I don't know.
So 2 things on that. You didn't answer my question, number 1.
Sorry.
I'll ask you that again in a second. When you talk about this isn't something you did 10 years ago, typically with your strengths, these are strengths that you're born with, that you were made this way. So let me ask you a couple more questions on this and just see if we're still there. How far into the future do you see?
I don't know the answer to that at all.
Do you see, I mean, if you can think 5 years ahead, do you see 5 years ahead? And it's different for everybody. So just know
I guess I do too, but I have no, I mean, I don't have the foggiest clue what I'll be doing in years. Like, okay. I mean, I have a thing I'm trying to work toward, but I have no idea if I'm going to be able to accomplish it. But I am now. I do have sort of a 5-year plan for the first time in my life, sort of, but only barely, like, like, I guess it's more like I think about what the future of the world might be like, and then I am trying to make changes in my business. I'm like, well, if I can do these things in my business in the next 3 months, like if I can write this book, and if that book becomes successful, then I can write more books.
Yeah.
That is literally my entire vision for the future. Is I would like to be right things. That's 100% my entire, that's it. Because as far as I'm concerned, is I've finally found a happy work situation. So my vision for the future is, I mean, see, that maybe that is the answer. The answer is, can I see in the future? For me, what I see in the future is I'm going to keep doing this because I love doing it. So I see in 5 years, I'm going to still be exactly what I'm doing. But hopefully I'm going to add on, that I'm writing some books and doing things that affect more than one kid individually at a time, hour by hour. I'm going to try to add on things where I can affect larger numbers of children by helping, or students, helping them by writing books and doing videos like we're doing here. And that's it.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm going to give you a comparison for me with my strengths that I have. I'm very much like, I can remember, I don't know, yesterday, and then I'll go into maybe Tuesday of next week. That's my plan.
Oh, I see.
Now, can I say, what do I think I might want to do in 5 years? I can do that, but it's not where I live. It's not where I thrive. I don't enjoy thinking about 5 years from now. I enjoy getting stuff done now. That's what I do.
Okay. I get your point. So I think it's normal that I'm constantly thinking, okay, I need to start writing a book now because I know in 2 years I need to be doing something different. Like that is all I'm thinking about all the time, is I need to be, that's why last year I started doing voice acting and took lessons. That's why I did this, because I'm constantly trying to add new skills and things like that to my thing, because I am constantly thinking about, okay, how I change my position 2 and 3 and 5 years down the line. So I can't see what it is that the result's going to be, but I am always thinking about and envisioning 100 different things it could be, and trying to figure out how can I make one of those things happen. And so what you're saying is that's not normal, that's not what everybody else does, because I thought that's what everybody in the world does.
In fact,
I seriously did.
You keep just setting me up too, because with CliftonStrengths, the stuff that you're really good at, and it's so natural for you, you do think, you're like, yeah, everybody does this. No, they don't.
I literally am. You have literally blown my mind. I did not. That was not a thing that everybody does. I thought everybody does.
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow.
In fact, it's funny because people will be like, Kristin, how do you keep all those things in your head? And, you're just, it's amazing to me because I used to have a staff of up to 12 people and then, 30 people as an extended staff through all my agency work. And somebody come up to me and they go, the da-da-da-da-da project. I'm like, yes. And here's what's going on. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, I could just read it off and they go, how do you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? And
it's just
arranger's my arranger's my top strength. And that's what I do. I keep there. Yeah.
And they would be like, they would have to go through some things and all that to figure out what the heck's going on in the project. It would never be in their head.
Yeah. But to you, I mean, on this futuristic thing, even on the COVID stuff that you're looking at, what does this mean? And how long will this play out? And that's all futuristic thinking. And I'm like, oh, yay, Bobby did this work and I don't have to. I mean, that's the beauty of this is you love it. You put your time into it and I get the rewards of that. And then when you need me to set up a webinar, I'm like, yeah, let me boom.
Right.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fascinating. So that, and it is. And the Clifton report also, as I read through it, at the end of each of these, it said, okay, here are the weaknesses that go with this and the things you need to watch out for. And I mean, definitely it does bother some of the people that are close to me that I'm always off, like worrying about the future. And then I'm like, oh, I was supposed to call the pharmacy and get the my prescription and I forgot. And now I'm out of whatever, my blood pressure, or like, oh, I'm supposed to do this thing. It's like today I have to leave myself notes and stuff about basic, obvious things that need to be done today. And if I don't do that, they just don't happen, but I'm constantly off thinking about, my goals for 3 months and a year from now, so that is a difference, that's a trip.
It is. And I think the thing to me that's the most favorite is, you look at executing and doing those little things, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is a chore. Mm-hmm. Like if you hired a VA that was high in executing, they'd be like, oh, give me more, because they love it. They thrive at that. Yeah. So you're actually complimenting people when you're actually asking for help.
Yeah.
And, if you asked me to put together a party or I'm doing a half-day event in Charlotte this summer, I was like, oh, I can't wait to get my hands on that, and for somebody like you, you'd be like, oh my gosh, please.
Oh, that's the worst thing I can imagine.
I know, right?
Trying to figure out the detail of an in-person event that happens on a date that's the worst thing I possibly imagine being in charge of. An event that happens date. It's awful. That's terrible. Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah. And that's what I love about strength. One of the things that I see, with other assessments, I think every one of them has their place. But what I love about strengths is you can choose. I see them as a destination and I see strengths as a journey, and that you can choose to do the things that you're naturally good at. And they actually energize you and get you happy. I mean, look at us. We're bouncing because we're talking about the stuff we love. And you can choose to do that every day of your life.
Absolutely. And, and this is something, okay, just to kind of at least from my end, wrap this up in a little way. I mean, I just turned 49. And so when I think back people I went to high school with, once you get to a certain age, I mean, it really has happened 10, 15 years ago, but I mean, there's some people that I went to high school with that have become very, very successful and some of them even pretty famous. Like one of the guys that graduated from high school hosts this TV show called The Bachelor. So Chris Harrison has done pretty well for himself, and there are other people that are quite successful in Hollywood and in different ways, and it's important students who watch this thing that finding out about your strengths is really important because as an example with Chris, when Chris graduated high school, he didn't know what he was good at, but he knew he was interested in journalism. And Chris went to college in Oklahoma and he got a degree in journalism. And then he was a field news reporter in Oklahoma City And then there was the bombing of the building there in Oklahoma City, and then somebody saw him on the news, and then they put him to host some little game show somewhere on like the House ATV network or something like that. And then he was on that game show, and then eventually he ended up hosting The Bachelor. Like, there's no magic to any of this, right? You go find something you love, and then you go do it, and then if you have passion for it and you're good, eventually you keep doing things, and then you end up being Chris Harrison on The Bachelor, right? Like, this stuff is important because once you're in the thing you're passionate about, the things can happen. As long as you're in it and you're happy, that's how it all starts.
Well, let's talk about, yes. And let's talk about that. So, you know, one of the things that I always talk to my students about is, what are you good at in school? And they're like, okay, well, I'm good at math, but Kristin, I really don't want to do a lot of math. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is, if you're good at something, you probably do have an enjoyment, you know, some type of enjoyment. So I'm like, tell me what you're good at in school. I don't care if that means it's lunch, because that's telling me it's school, right? If they might be high in communication, they just enjoy that energy of being around people. That's very telling. Are you know, is it gym? Is it archery? Is it, what is it? Is it math? Is it dancing, science? You name it, because these are all pieces to the puzzle that make up you and who you are. And so we talk about that. And what's crazy to me is this: the ACT organization tells us that only 30% of students actually take a major in something that they were good at in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think the problem there is that we're not talking about what do you love to do. Right. We're talking, mom might say, "Oh, I think you'd be a great lawyer." And they go, "Okay, well, that's a good idea. My mom's a lawyer,h." Right. And it's
what happened to me.
But yeah, but if you're not enjoying it, why put yourself through that? I've got a great video that I just put on my Facebook page today about a girl that I worked with. It's called Taylor's Journey, Career Journey. And it talks about, she actually went to school to be an accountant, hated every minute of it, struggled to get through it, came out, got to be an accountant, and then the story unfolds, and I'll let you watch that. But but now doing something she loves to do, and it was because we went through this process. So what do you do in school? What do you enjoy doing? You know, most 17-year-old boys love gaming. And my answer to that is, that's awesome. There's lots of work to be done in gaming and video and all that good stuff. And then the last thing is marrying it with the natural talents and bringing it all together. And like you said, then having this progression where you're doing different things, but it's all within a path. It's not just random stuff. So
and a quick side point on that thing, like when now that I learned those things, and I've mentioned on previous shows about the computer gaming industry, there's important things to know about, which is, like, in computer gaming, there are 3 or 4 main different jobs that are the 3 big different jobs, and only one of them is programmer, right? There's also writer, and there's producer, which is the idea person and the organizer person, and there's artist, right, with the person making all the images.
Build the characters. There's the people that come up with the game itself.
So you don't. So it doesn't, just because you like video games doesn't mean you have to go get a degree in coding. So people often think that just because you like a thing means there's only one made that leads you there. Because, like, graphic design, it can lead you to video games if that's the part of it you like or whatever, right? So just keep in mind that there are lots of pathways into lots of different industries, and there's so many different things. And I mean, I think, but that's what I think could go interesting about this is, like, a student who, like, does this. And so, I mean, I guess a student could go to the CliftonStrengths, the Gallup Clifton website, and just take this test. Although, I mean, just reading the report, to me, like, it was interesting to read the report, but I think I would need someone like you to actually, like, help me, because just reading that report, I still don't know. That report doesn't tell me what college I should go do. I would still need someone to help guide me to understanding myself and what that means, right? Because I wouldn't be able to figure it out directly from reading that report, I don't think.
There is. And I'll tell you, you know, I talk to parents a lot, And it's interesting because parents don't understand how much influence they have over their kids when they're talking about this subject. And I think that's one of the challenges that they find is that their kid, they've been picking these kids up since they've been tiny. You know, they're falling and they're grabbing them to pick them up. They're going to walk, drive into a pole and they're like, stop. Your parents, as parents, we're always making sure they're not going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this age, you are no longer a managing person. You're a consultant, right? As a parent. And it's time to push these kids out the door and let them kind of blossom. And I will tell you, what I see is that this one subject, I think parents need outside help. Even with test prep, I mean, they're not going to listen to them. They might be the smartest person on earth and they're not going to listen to them. That's just the way it is. The other part of it is this. Remember when I talked about the shine in their eyes? When I'm talking to these kiddos and they're telling me, we're talking about strengths and they're giving me examples, you can just see them light up. And I think it's easy for me though, because I'm not cooking dinner while I'm talking to them. I'm not, trying to pick up the room. They have my full attention and I get to see that shine and I see it just, that's can't
amazing
when you're looking for it. But the other thing is I get to be the cheerleader. If they say they want to be a park ranger, I get to go, that's awesome. Tell me more about it. And you know what's going to happen with a parent. They're going to go, what in the heck are you thinking? Why would you do that? Right?
Right. They're going to immediately shoot the idea down. Right.
They will. And you know what? I do it with my kids. So I get it.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Yeah. So anyway, it's, it's one of those things that, yes, putting these three things together, what you're at school, what you're interested in. The interest part, I think, is where parents have a lot of a disadvantage because the kids are not going to be as open with them because as parents, we write things in pen. And as a coach, I write it in pencil. And if they go, oh, Kristin, I changed my mind. I'm like, that's all right. Erase that. We're going to go on to the next thing. And with parents, they'll be like, and remember that time 20 years ago when you wanted to be a and you're like, gosh, be quiet. That was like a 10-minute conversation, right?
Yeah, I thought you wanted to be a cis astronaut, right?
So as you can tell, I love this. I love what I do. I love working with the kids because I have more great stories from these kids. So, and the biggest thing, Bobby, is my favorite part's working with the kids, but what I love for the parents is they feel really good that their kid's confident walking into college, knowing what they want to do, or at least knowing the path they want to go down. And I can save them money because they're not going to change majors every other semester or every semester.
Yeah, and then have to go for 5 years. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, right now we can all use getting through it as quick as we can for sure, So that's amazing. I think, well, and just, I mean, finding the thing you're excited about and passionate about, the sooner you can find it, the better everything can go in life. I mean, it's just, it's like, I mean, it sounds silly because I know there are a lot of people who would say it's a very old school idea to say, life's not about finding a job you're passionate about. Life's about just finding a job and going and working hard and making money. I'm pretty sure that's what my dad would say. Job's not about having fun and being happy. Job just making money and all that. But if you're miserable, your job's not going to go well. It didn't go well for me when I was miserable. You're not going to be successful and make that money or whatever and be able to provide job security for your family. If you're miserable every day, you're not going to be able to perform at your best. You're not going to be in good physical or emotional health. It's not like everybody in this world's not going to find like a job that's all butterflies and rainbows and everything. But if you have passion for what you're doing, if you can find something about that, something that makes you light up even once a week or something, man, that's worth it. Because like I said, I mean, I guess it was, I said earlier that I never ever in my legal career, but I would once in a while, some little complex issue and solving it. I would light up about once in a while, because I could remember being over in one of my colleagues' offices and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I figured this one thing out. And I'd get really excited about figuring that one thing out. But man, it was few and far between, and the rest of it was just not, you know. So
Well,
this is just amazing.
I'm betting as a young lawyer that you were having to do a lot of executing.
Oh, I did nothing but execute.
Yeah.
Make these 12 documents exactly like those. I mean, take these 6,000 pages worth of documents and change the name, address, state, in all the occurrences of the name, address, and state, and all this, all the way through these documents. Yeah, it was what you call a form practice. Yeah. So make these documents just like those docs, except change all the names.
And as a reminder, Bobby, your executing domains are way at the bottom of your list. Of course.
I hated it.
Yeah, they drained you. They made you super unhappy. You had to try too hard to do it. And yeah. So no, it's amazing though that you can choose to do the things you're good at.
It is, it is a privilege to, like, we need to acknowledge that people who have the opportunity and the time to think about these things, that we are lucky to live in a country and to be part of families or whatever it is, that we get to have this opportunity to take the time to even have a choice of what major or college or job or anything, right? But if you have that privilege, use it and then do good things with your life and be a good person and acknowledge that you had that privilege. Don't squander it, and don't be an idiot, and don't go to spring break and in Cabo and come back with COVID-19. Go and work hard and do a good job.
Yeah, and the point you're making is, let's make the most out of these 4 years of college, and let's say 4 years,
exactly
4 years, because my other part of this is I want them to really enjoy college for what it is, and it's not just all about studying; it's also about growing up and learning new things and finding your people
and making connections that will last the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I'd rather have them do that than worrying about, I don't know what I want to major in because I really haven't put enough time into thinking
and
about
changing majors 3 times like I did.
Yeah. All right, we'll let everybody else go. I know that you're going to be probably clamoring to find out more about your other strengths, so we'll take that offline. And thanks for anybody that stuck with us. I know we talked for a long time, but this is a really important subject. So
absolutely. And those of you, if you are watching this on YouTube, please type in right now into the chat, type hashtag replay, because we'll let people know that this is being watched, and it'll keep it in the search results. That's really important for keeping these watched. And we do this every 2 weeks, Thursdays, and sometimes do extra bonus episodes. So like our pages, I'm at BobbyHoodOnlineTutoring.com or Facebook.com/BobbyHoodOnlineTutoring.
And I am at KristinClark.com and Kristin Clark Coaching on Facebook.
Well, wonderful. This is great, Kristin. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bobby.